Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. We continue our reading of Iqbal's Reconstruction of Religious Thought in Islam, and we had stopped here. So he failed to see, and by he means Imam Ghazali, rahmatullah alayh, failed to see that thought and intuition are organically related. As I said last time, he's reading Ghazali through the Cartesian lens, and basically it's a Hegelian reading and critique of Kant. So he failed to see, that is Ghazali, that thought and intuition are organically related, and the thought must necessarily simulate finitude and inconclusiveness because of its alliance with serial time. This is basically Hegel's critique of Kant, because in Kant we have, we've gone through this before, but just to keep the sequence clear, I'll just go through it quickly again. So Kant, you have reason, and in Kant, reason has two related senses. One is a limited sense of reason, and the other is a broad sense of reason. In limited sense of reason, reason is a faculty of inference, basically. So what it longs for, in its nature is completeness. So it moves from, or transits from, one premise to another, and to the next one, and to the fourth and fifth, and so on. And it, in principle, it will stop only when this cycle is complete, that his explanation is complete. And explanation is complete when there's no further possible question which can be raised. And at this point we can say that reason is self-sufficient, is satisfied with this explanation, and it can stop. But as a matter of fact, this chain of inferences can go on for infinity. And since we don't have any point where this can, in principle stop, and that's why, although reason is by its nature self-sufficient and complete, it doesn't find completeness in this world. And that's what that's one of the meaning in which reason is finite. Like, it's infinite, it's in longing and its nature, but finite in the sense that what Iqbal is calling serial time, it never finishes. Okay, again, as it might want. So go back to where we started. So in its limited sense, reason is the faculty of inference. And in this limited sense, reason is contrasted with the other faculty, which is that of understanding. But in a broader sense, for Kant, reason includes reason in the limited sense as well as understanding. So I just explained the reason in the limited sense. So let's contrast reason in the limited sense to understanding and how they are different from each other, because that will clarify some of the things Iqbal is saying here. So reason, understanding is the faculty of judgment, the faculty of concepts, because that's through concepts that you, and understanding basically work on information we get through our senses. So the senses provide us with raw material. So senses don't have concepts. Our faculty of senses doesn't have concepts. So it provides us raw material about the world around us. Raw material about the world. And this raw material goes through the form of these intuition, these senses, and then through concepts of understanding. And then based on that conceptual categorization, faculty understanding judge things. So for example, I may judge that the tree is green. So I have the concept of a priori concept of tree and a priori concept of green, not in their specificity but in their categories. But the information about tree and green is provided by the senses, and understanding then categorizes that information. So one goes to tree, which is substance, let's say, and this goes to green, which is a quality. So these are two basic concepts of understanding, and based on those two concepts, then understanding judges that the tree is green, and this judgment is a positive judgment where you include greenness, all greenness into the tree. Or tree partakes in the green. And for that judgment, you require, a subject and its unity and all those things. So I don't want to go into that. In that sense, for Kant, understanding which is a faculty of reason in the broader sense, but opposed to reason in the limited sense we just described, understanding is conditioned by the world. Although there's a freedom there, we'll just come to that. That's why it is faculty of reason, because reason and freedom are two very close concepts in Kant. So but understanding, this freedom of understanding is conditioned by the world. Because even though faculty of understanding provide the concepts, in this case concept of a substance and quality, and also judgment, which here include inclusion and exclusion, and it provide the unity of concepts and information. It doesn't provide any information. Information it gets from outside, from senses, from the world. So although understanding has this freedom on the basis of which it judge things, otherwise there's no point of judgment. For example, probably animals don't have judgment, and the non-animate things don't have judgment in this specific sense, which requires freedom. So even though understanding the faculty of freedom, it is conditioned by the world because the information it can't create. It is bound by the information provided by the senses. It can't just make up that there is a tree, and that would be the function of imagination and reason itself. In the limited sense, it can't just invent that tree is green or not. If tree is not green, then it has to be bound by that information. So in that sense, understanding, although it's a faculty of reason and so faculty of freedom, it is conditioned by the world. So it is bound. The faculty of understanding is bound by and that's the analytic thought. I'll keep talking about discursive thought, you can call it. And since it is bound by the world, in this sense it is finite. Understanding is finite, and reason in this limited in this broad sense is also finite. Then that's the Kantian view. So understanding, although is the faculty of freedom, understanding is bound by the given, which is whatever is given in the world. It doesn't create the world. It can't create the world. So if the tree is there, it will, and it is green, it can't say that tree is red. I mean, it can say that, but it will make an error then in judgment. So understanding in it, although it is essentially a faculty of freedom because it's part of the faculty of reason, it is bound by the given, bound by the senses, bound by the world, bound by the information provided by senses. It cannot ignore that. Reason, on the other hand, doesn't deal with the world as such. It doesn't deal with the world. It doesn't deal with, and it's not bound by. It's not bound by the. Reason, on the other hand, has self-bounding. So reason has its own discipline in this limited sense. And in this sense, reason is different from understanding in Kant. That's one of the basic distinctions in Kant's theoretical philosophy, which would be attacked by Hegel. Reason is self-bounding in the sense that reason's discipline is self-discipline, because reason is not dealing directly with the world. What reason does is it works on the material it gives itself and it work according to its own plan. Its plan is not guide its own plan. Its own plan. Its plan is not guided by the world. And what it does is it takes the material provided by understanding, whatever the judgments are. But now this material doesn't refer to the world, because it refers to the world on this stage. But now it has become internalized in reason's own domain. And reason take this material and work on this material according to its own plan. It's not bound by the world directly, at least. And that's his strength, his freedom, that it's not bound by any given. Not bound. That's what he mean by infinite. Reason has the freedom to cross all limits, Kant says. So that's its strength. It's not bound by the world itself. But it's also its weakness, because since it's not bound by itself, we can never know that what it is weaving corresponds to a reality or not. And reason take this material it takes, brings through understanding, and try, and this understanding is conditioned by the world, yeah. But reason wants an explanation for it, which is, as we said, complete explanation. So it moves from conditioned to unconditioned. It will stop only when there is no further explanation asked, and that only happens when you reach the unconditioned, the absolute. That's what absolute. But reason, as we saw, never reaches that, because of its finitude, or it works through serial time or whatever. So although it aims for completeness, it never reaches that completeness. So that was Kant's view, at least in his critique of pure reason, and Hegel criticized that view. And Hegel said that this dichotomy between understanding and is itself a product of a particular viewpoint, and we can change this viewpoint, where this dichotomy between reason, this dichotomy between freedom and the world is overcome. So basically the whole Hegelian project is to show that reason, or this freedom, and the world are basically the same thing. Its freedom is basically the infinite thought, or the absolute, expressing itself through the world, or something like that. And Iqbal basically buys into that idea, and he thinks that reason, yeah, and obviously, and now he's criticizing based on that. He's criticizing Ghazali, why Ghazali didn't believe in Hegel before Hegel. Yeah. So here were we. He failed to. We started here. He failed to see that is Ghazali, that thought and intuition are organically related. In the way I've said that thought and world are an intuition. You can read world for the intuition. So there's no essential distinction between freedom and the world or the given. It's just a partial perspective which make us believe that, according to Hegel, intuition are organically related and the thought must necessarily simulate finitude and in conclusion because of its alliance with serial time. So it's only through our own finite understanding, if we look at that, we think that reason and understanding and reason and the world are opposed to each other, or the reason is finite, or understanding is finite, or reason is opposed to understanding. But if we move from that perspective and take a Hegelian stance, then we can see that the thought is essentially finite is a mistaken thing, and for this reason unable to capture the finite is based on a mistaken notion of the movement of thought in knowledge. Okay, so we basically covered until this point, but I want to, in the next session, I will talk a bit more about this specific sentence, but we'll stop here and inshallah we'll continue from here. If you are able to read a bit of Hegel, then it will be good, because coming passages are very Hegelian. Okay, thank you.